Two-headed right, two heads are better than one-headed right. Two heads are better than one-headed right. Two heads are better than one-headed right. Two heads are better than one.
Hi, welcome back to our channel. My name is Evelyn.
My name is Monty.
And together we're the Two-Headed Writer, a father-daughter writing team based out of Stillwater, Oklahoma.
And we're in the same room together for the 77th week in a row. Thanks to the coronavirus. But we would be in the same room together now because it's summer.
Yeah.
And you're done with school.
Yeah, I would be back by now.
But when Evelyn was going to school in Iowa, majoring in English, we started a weekly conversation in order to catch one another up on our writing, and we thought that we would videotape that and share it with the world, just in case anybody else wants to come along with us on our journey from not published to published. And here's the not published part, and here's the published part. Evelyn, where are we? Not published, published. Right there. That's where we are on this journey. We still have a little ways to go. Each week we talk about the book that we're writing together, the book that Evelyn's writing on her own, the book that I'm writing on my own, other projects that we get into, and Evelyn's schoolwork and all of that. Evelyn, you done finished with school.
I am finished with school, yes.
How did it go?
It went well, I hope.
Haven't got your grades out?
No, final grades haven't been turned in yet.
But you had a couple of big projects at the end of the semester.
I did have a few big projects at the end of the semester. 3 out of my 4 courses had a final paper due, and then I also had a final test in one of those courses as well.
A Beatles test. She had a test over the Beatles.
I was taking a course this semester called World of the Beatles, and it counted toward my general education credits, and he was very jealous. I learned about the Beatles' path to stardom. I learned all about them as musicians.
But let's tie this to writing, because you also learned
how to write about music.
Yeah, and that you enjoy writing about music.
Yeah. The big final project for that class was to write an album review over one of the Beatles' albums, and we did it over the course of the semester. And I had not had to write about music before. I was in band, but I didn't join any of the extra groups where you learned music theory or anything like that. And I mean, you're a musician, so I kind of know some stuff about songwriting and how songs are constructed, but I'd never had to put out coherent thoughts about music. I've been reviewing books for a while, so I sort of had an idea of what you should say in a review, what you liked and what you didn't like, and why you think that certain things worked or not, depending on how detailed the review is. But, I was just not sure how to talk about music, especially music that I'm very emotionally connected to, which the Beatles is something that I've grown up listening to.
And you ended up writing a really good paper on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album, and you liked it enough that you thought you might end up polishing it some more and using it in another context?
Yeah, so there are several magazines on the University of Iowa campus, and they publish things like essays, and so that would qualify. There's one magazine in particular who I know publishes a lot of stuff about music already, and I think that they might like my take on Sgt. Pepper. I connected it to a bit of Beatles history and then also a bit of my personal experience with the album, as well as talking about why certain songs work and why the album works as a whole, even though I'm not totally sure that it is the best concept for a concept album.
Yeah, this is one of the first, or the first.
It was a pioneer
concept album, and Evelyn is not convinced that the concept is enough to hang the album together, but I think you decided that it was.
Yeah, I decided
as a listening
that
experience.
I decided that even if I don't totally buy into this is a concert by fictional band Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and possibly some friends, I still think that the album is, well, it's not sonically cohesive totally. I mean, it's all over the place, but somehow it still works, and I tried to, like, explain why I think thematically it works, rather than just, oh, this concept is the only thing holding it together.
Yeah, that's not the only thing holding it together. It's all the grooves are on the same piece of vinyl. That's what holds it together. There is some centripetal force going on there, but it's not going to fly apart because the vinyl is strong. Oh, you reviewed the digital version. How's it going with your novel? I've heard about some progress.
I mean, I think they're kind of caught up on my, except for the conversation that we had about it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done a lot. I finished.
You're still writing 300 words a day?
Technically, yeah.
Technically.
I took a break over finals, the 2 weeks where I was doing final stuff. So today is my first day that I've, like, really written anything.
So you've been writing 200 words a day since today, and that's going well?
Yes.
Good. Our book together?
Yeah.
How are we doing on that?
Oh, well, I wouldn't know.
I have been editing chapters based on comments that Evelyn made. And this is draft 9, we're still working on. I have come to part 4, the last quarter of the book. I ran into a chapter that needs a lot of work, so I've been kind of stuck there for a few days. Also, we ended up, there was an issue throughout the book that we've been looking at, so you and I sat down and looked at all the notes relating to that issue, and sort of discussed where we needed to still make changes. So I've been changing those, so that's also kept me stuck on the same chapter. But once I get this chapter done, I think it's going to be pretty smooth sailing for the rest of the book.
Nice.
So
And
draft
then-
9 will be done very soon.
Yeah, and then we're gonna read it out loud together as kind of like a final pass. Make sure we didn't somehow individually final pass before we start putting it back out there, sending it out to agents again.
Mm-hmm.
Final pass, not final pass. They know I don't mean final pass.
I know, but you think that you mean final pass before we send it to agents. I'm like, we're going to find stuff. We're going to be like, we got to fix this, we got to fix this. And then I'll be like, okay, one more pass. That's my prediction.
If we end up doing one more pass, it's going to be because of you and not because of me.
Well, you're not going to say anything if you see a thing that needs fixing.
I highly doubt that both of us, having read it like 4 times between the two of us in the past 3 months, we've missed something glaringly obvious that would need enough fixing to call it an extra pass through the book.
Okay, so tweaks. A tweak pass. We might still have a tweak pass. I don't know when to let something go. Help me. Help me.
I'm trying.
Okay.
I've been trying
Okay.
for several years.
For several years.
Anything make you particularly excited to work on stuff recently?
Well, I keep calling it my folly because, I try to downplay it because I put a lot of time into it and I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but I do occasionally hear about, how all the kids are at home and don't have anything to do, and I think, that's what's motivating me to do that, because hopefully it'll be an interesting platform to help some kids become inspired to write something, to read something, give them something fun to interact with and do online while we're all stuck at home with this virus going around. So that's kind of what's behind my motivation to work on that. I have been reading some books from the library. You know, my other book is a science-related fiction for kids. I don't say science fiction, I say science-related fiction because I'm not sure if it counts as science fiction. It's not speculative in that way.
Yeah, it doesn't fall under the umbrella of speculative fiction, really. There's just robots.
Yeah.
Which
It's very realistic. It's
yeah.
not, I wouldn't say very realistic, but, you know, I mean, like Nancy Drew is not very realistic, but it's in the real world.
It's so close to technology that we currently have that there's no
difference, really.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have been reading science-related kids, you know, middle grade, either science fiction, fantasy, or science-related, and just trying to get a handle on what's out there, and so I've been enjoying reading those books. And it does inspire me because I'm like, my book is different, and I want the thing I'm trying to do to be out there and available to kids. So that's inspiring as well. How about for you?
I will show some level of self-control and only briefly mention that I watched the final season of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power on Netflix. And that's been my... Okay.
She-Ra fan.
It released on Friday. It is now Monday. That's all I've been able to think about all weekend. If you've seen it and you know me, you know why. But I'm not going to spoil it. I'll just say it was something that I had never gotten to see on screen before, and I was rightly excited by that. It reminded me why I want to tell the story that I'm currently trying to tell, which is good. The Iowa City Public Library's online catalog is tailored way more to my reading taste than this Oklahoma Virtual Library is. And so now that I have access to that, I have a library card from the Iowa City Public Library. I've read like a lot since I got home. I'll like finish a book and I'm like, alright, start the next book. And then all I have to do is like tap the button and then the next book is like right there. It's magical. I love it.
eBooks.
And then I also ordered a bunch of books for my birthday last month, so I got a bunch of books there. So it's a mix of middle grade and young adult, both contemporary and fantasy, because my net is wide. I've cast my genre net. Like, I don't really, like, I'd like to write mostly fantasy, but like, I'm not ruling out writing contemporary. My next project that I want to work on is a contemporary story. Just, like, for some reason, like, I don't know, you seem a lot more focused in, like, what you want to write than I do. Which maybe that'll change over time, but I don't think so. Like, I love middle grade still for what it is. I can't relate to those characters as much, but I still, like, think those stories are just important as young adult. But I actually do want to talk about Ghost Squad by Claribel A. Ortega. It's a middle grade book, and I own it, so you can read it if you want to. And it was one of the first books that I've read, like, out of all of the books I've read ever, where the main character is bilingual and speaks both English and Spanish throughout the book. Like, I can only think of, like, maybe 2 or 3 other books where that happens, and usually it's just like, oh, we'll throw in a couple familiar phrases, or like, oh, when we're talking about food, we have to say it in Spanish because, like, that's the name of the dish, or, like, in Zorata Cordova's Brooklyn Brujas, like, when they're talking about magic things, like, Spanish is the language of the magic that they use. But, like, this one was just like, oh, no, this family is bilingual and they're going to speak both Spanish and English. And so I had to, like, sometimes I couldn't figure out what they meant by context clues, so I had to go search online to figure out what they were saying, right?
Yeah.
Which is, like, not a familiar experience for me, because most of the books that I read are written in English, which is my first language. I want to learn Spanish. I'm taking Spanish next semester, and it was just interesting because, like, even though I've been trying to read more diversely, and because I want to write diversely, I, like, still hadn't stumbled upon a book where that happened. And I was like, oh, well, how many books are there where that happens? And I'm guessing probably not that many, and especially not that many for children.
Yeah. And how does this inspire you? Because of your desire to write diversely, but more specifically.
So it's an adventure story that seems pretty on par with things that I read and enjoyed as a kid. The main character and her friend accidentally unleash some ghosts on their town and have to figure that out. Like, it's a very, like, fun, funny, just kind of thing, right? And it's totally just a normal story, right? And also the main character is Latina and her family immigrated, and so she's part of diaspora culture, and, like, that's in there, like, and it's significant to her character, but it's also just like any other entertaining children's book. It was just like, oh, yeah, you can mix and make marketable your identity. It's kind of difficult. Like, I'm always afraid when I'm writing things, I start to think, oh, well, like, how could this be criticized? And then that makes me want to stop writing, because I'm, like, afraid. I'm like, oh, this isn't blank enough.
You know, I guess that what makes you unique as a writer is that you're you. And if you're not willing to put yourself on the page, then...
I think a really interesting example for me is the author Jenny Han. She writes young adult contemporary romance. And her first series, The Summer I Turned Pretty series, is about the main character's female, but she's white. Jenny Han is Korean. And in her second series, she made the main character Korean. It becomes part of the character, and it's something that they talk about, but it's not, like, the main part of her story. But because she feels like a more rounded out character and seems like closer to the author's, like, heart, I enjoyed reading those books a lot more because it felt more personal and real, right?
Yeah, and it's more unique, and it's more... She's writing about things that are near and dear to herself, so it comes out across.
Mm-hmm. I've been seeking out more Latinx authors because my family is Mexican. And
the immigrant experience, or the experience of being in part of a group like that, or whatever, the experiences that they have because of being Latino. Huh? The experiences that they have because of being Latinx.
we keep
get
things
the
gender
language just right.
neutral here, sir.
Okay. Those experiences are human experiences.
Mm-hmm.
They are put into interesting situations that, you know, if you're from the privileged class like me, I'm an old white guy.
I mean, I totally experience just as much white privilege as you. I just also have a desire to connect to the culture.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're not necessarily put into those same situations, but everybody has difficulties in their life. So, I mean, I really think that if it's a story about humans, it's relatable to other humans. But it's also important to read that, you know, and experience relating to that other human in that situation, because I think people in their lives don't always understand that another person's experience is relatable to them.
More reasons why diverse literature is important other than people being able to see themselves in stories. Empathy. It's the whole window versus mirror thing. Books can be both of those things for different people. I am able to relate to those stories on a certain level because a lot of the authors are not first generation. They are the children or grandchildren of immigrants, and therefore are in a similar position to me where they're not sure how much of their culture they get to, like, have ownership over.
Mm-hmm.
And also a lot of them are not white passing, and so they or grew up more involved in their culture. So it's interesting. I don't think I would necessarily ever write a Mexican experience book because, like, I don't have that really. But the idea of, like, how much of your history do you have claim to, that's something that I think is interesting and is probably affecting my current work, actually, if I think about it.
Yeah, I feel like I was raised in a cultureless environment, which is impossible, right? Because culture is the human environment that you're in.
Yeah, so...
But it's a very bland, Midwestern, not connected to large groups of people. I don't come from a large family.
Yeah, you weren't even,
I'm
like,
adopted.
cowboy.
I don't, like, you know, I mean, I don't, it's just my mom, dad, me and my sister. We didn't live close to other family. We didn't have family culture. I got my culture from TV. My culture is Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, so
I
that's...
don't know what that is. I mean, that's not a culture.
when you are solidly part of the majority group, your culture becomes just popular culture.
Yeah, I guess so.
Which, yeah, so there are different, like, subsets of white people who've still held on to their cultural roots, like Italian Americans. Also, there can be, like, regional culture. Like, there is, like, an Oklahoma regional culture. You just weren't, like...
Yeah, I was never roped into it.
That's a cowboy pun, y'all. There are plenty of differentiations between European cultures. Just in America, we're super racist, and so every time someone came in from a new European country, they were like, oop, better assimilate. So we don't have as much big distinctions between cultures, and people have kind of lost track of, like, where their families came from. So even, like, yeah, you're adopted, so you don't know technically necessarily with any exact certainty where your ancestors came from, but also Grandma and Papa didn't have, like, any sort of...
Yeah, I wasn't adopted into a culture.
Why do we have corned beef on St. Patrick's Day?
Because it's Irish.
Is Grandma, are you Irish?
No, it's just, like, it's a thing that got absorbed into the popular culture.
I don't know other people who do. The only other people I know who do that are, like, actually, like, claim to be Irish, so... But we've never...
I have some Irish blood in me. I know that.
Okay, well...
I have no idea why she feels... I think Grandma just likes to have little traditions that, you know,
Yeah.
Corned beef on St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, so we have, like, family traditions. but I wouldn't call them, they're not like based off of any certain culture. It's just like things that we do every year. And I would, like I said, I wouldn't say I'm super culturally connected to the other side of my family either. But I know how to make tortillas, so
There's that.
there's that.
I mean, when we go to family reunions on that side of the family, there's a lot of Mexican food. They sometimes have a piñata.
They have a flag usually. They're like, ooh, let's drink tequila.
You know, so
I will say this, because most of my Mexican family members, especially the ones who are more closely related to me, are like me, white passing. They get to pick and choose when they own that culture and when they don't own that culture. And they will own that culture when it means they get to eat yummy food that my grandma and her sisters made, and then they won't own that culture sometimes when it's more important. So I'm trying to be aware that I have the ability to go in and out of that, and that people are probably never going to look at me and be like, ah, Mexican. But I can still use the fact that I care to my advantage to help lift up voices of people who are not as privileged as me. And so that's why I wouldn't ever try to write a story about Mexican culture, but I would definitely, like, I don't know, like blurb someone's book.
what if it's a terrible book about Mexican culture?
Yeah, so your whole thing is like promote accurate science and make kids excited about that. Is there an ally that you found there, maybe?
More of a contrast to what that maybe helped me clarify what I want to do with my own writing. So in one book, right off the bat, we know that this is fantasy because the protagonist is a girl who has invented a death ray, and she's her ferret is going to shoot it at her. It's not a fantasy ferret. It took me a minute to work this out. It was right at the first thing. My ferret was pointing a death ray at me. That the ferret is an actual ferret, like a real world type animal.
It's
Nothing
just
magical
a ferret,
about it. It's
and
just
it's
a ferret.
mischievous because it's a ferret.
But it's mischievous because it's a ferret, and it was possibly going to shoot the death ray. I'm like, okay, so this, I think 11-year-old, 12-year-old girl built a death ray. That's fantasy. And in this book, she is an inventor, and she just knows how to do these things. That's fantasy. So she ends up going to a school with other kids who have similar levels of talent in different areas, and it's an adventure, and it's fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just is not what I want to write. And I think there's probably room for both in terms of getting kids excited about science, right? Because that's part of how this series is kind of pitched. And this is the first book in the series. These kids are really smart, and we're lifting that up, and so these are for smart kids to feel like they have heroes to read about, and I mean smart kids can be marginalized, just like any other group, and they are a lot. Their peers put them down for their intelligence. So here's a book where that, she goes through that in regular school. She's teased and tormented, and she comes to the school where everybody's really smart. So, and they do great things. So,
I feel like, does she not get teased and tormented by the smart kids either? Or
not by the kids in her new school.
That's unrealistic. That's fantasy. Smart kids are mean. Smart kids are threatened by other smart kids. Are you kidding me?
As a reader, as a kid, I would have been a little frustrated with this book because I would see it as a fantasy, where I was looking for some kind of science content that was real. The other book was full of real science, which I really liked. I was like, okay, this book is taking me on a tour of science. All the incredible things that we know about find a place somewhere to get mentioned, and it's all worked into the plot. And but it's also fantasy. It's more science fiction. The operative science in it is something that we don't have yet and probably never will have. So, you know, that's a science fiction trope. Draws you in because weird things are going on without explanation, and it also has two timelines. So you go back and forth in the chapters between the girl is in her own house, but it's empty, and physically just weird things are happening that are unexplainable by science, and things that make her think of what she knows about the universe and how it works. And that's how we bring in all these scientific concepts that are being violated, and she doesn't understand why. And in the other timeline, it's her regular life. In both timelines, it's her birthday. It's a real mystery. Like, how do these two timelines relate to each other? By the end, you find out the answer. It's, you know, pretty mind blowing. So I enjoyed that book. The whole setup was almost an excuse to just tell us about all kinds of actual science, which is cool, but also from a story point of view, I did occasionally start to go, okay, here's another science lesson. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hiding the vegetables in with the meat and potatoes. So, like, to me, like the science in a science fiction story, I would want to mix it in more organically. Like, if you need to know it, then it comes up and the characters are learning it along with the reader. My series is in science fiction, the Danica Dunn series, and the science that comes up there is like that. It's like, oh, we have a problem to solve, and this is the knowledge we need to solve it. And we struggle, and it's just a different
contemporary
different
children's fiction about a character who is a scientist.
Yeah, the story is more just driven by a need for my character to create something and succeed at something.
The hands-on application of these things that are...
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I wish science class was more like, but also less like, if that makes sense. When we do hands-on stuff in science class, a lot of the time it's just like, we're going to do this experiment, and if the thing that happens is what we think it should be, then you get an A, but if it's not, then you must have done it wrong, which is not how science works.
Exactly. That's why I did the whole Born to Do Science thing, in interviewing scientists for programs at the library, because...
He's talking about one of his albums. He's a children's musician sometimes, as well as a writer, and Born to Do Science was a science cafe that we did in collaboration with scientists at Oklahoma State University and also the Stillwater Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a song for each one, and there's an album, and I'm only saying this because if you haven't listened to it, it's on Spotify. Monty Harper.
Thank you. I think a lot of fiction makes it look this way. Makes it look like scientists already know the answers. That an experiment is a thing that you do that makes a mess and demonstrates something. For instance, making a volcano. If you have a children's fiction in which a science fair plays a part, the character is going to build a volcano. And there's no scientific point to that other than demonstrating, I don't know, maybe what a volcano looks like, but then they put baking soda and vinegar in it, which has nothing to do with how a volcano actually works. So those volcanoes drive me nuts.
You know what does a kind of, like, now that I'm thinking about it, does a pretty good example of, like, science is about solving problems and you can fail and you have to fix them and it's still science?
Mm-hmm.
The movie Meet the Robinsons?
Mm-hmm. Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We should rewatch Meet the Robinsons.
Okay.
Okay. They don't explain how he's doing it because it's not science that's technically possible. But it does show him like trial and error on multiple different inventions.
Yeah, trial and error is a big part of science and a big part of invention and a big part of technology, and I think it's overlooked too much in fiction. It's like you have the really smart character who just automatically knows the answers to things and knows what to do, and that's not science. That's not how it works. It's messy. Scientists don't know the answers. They are excited by an unanswered question. That's what gets them going. And so I wanted to put real scientists into my book. There are readers out there who are interested in science who would appreciate a book that takes it a little more seriously, while at the same time having a fantastic adventure that you wouldn't have in real life.
You can make things marketable without compromising them for what they are. Yeah, even if you're working with fictionally scientific elements, you should still be using the process that would have been used to figure that out, right?
Well, a lot of science fiction isn't actually about science.
Yeah.
It's more about technology. Like, okay, we're flying in a spaceship. Does that make this science fiction? Well, we're having an adventure, and it's science fiction because it's in outer space or it's a spaceship.
Space opera, that's my favorite
But we're
kind.
not actually doing any science. Yeah, that's space opera.
I really enjoy space opera. I like a bunch of misfits in a spaceship.
My stories will always have some element of actual science to them. That's probably going to be true.
I just want things to be gayer.
Let's write a story together about gay scientists.
Yeah. I like how our book kind of has both of those things, but like in very small doses.
That's true. That's true. Our Together book has a little gayness in it and a little science in it.
Yeah.
I'd say, they have to figure stuff out. They have to learn the rules of the world. They have to use a scientific trial and error to figure out how to make things happen. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Totally.
2 girls kiss.
Totally. So there you have it. All the secrets of our book revealed.
It could always be gayer and sciencier.
Let's write something where we just go completely over the top. It's the gayest, scienciest thing that anyone could imagine.
If you want to eventually read the scienciest, gayest book ever, you should subscribe to our channel so you can keep following us on our writing journey. Also, watch She-Ra. Also, leave us a big thumbs up so we know that you liked it. And comment down below, what's one thing that inspires you in your writing? What are the kind of stories that you think are important? We will be back next week with another video, but until then, remember, 2 heads are better than 1. Ooh.